Good afternoon, all. My name is Andrew Debenham. I work for Ascensus. I'm the sales director at the business. As a business, we provide software and infrastructure for the flexible workspace sector, which is clearly undergoing massive change at the moment. Bit of a revolution, if you like. We operate in London, New York, and recently LA. To sort of kick this session off, I'm going to ask a fairly broad question initially, just to kind of get a bit of discussion and debate. But in terms of the actual value proposition of workspace as a service, what is it? Why are people attracted to it, or why are they not attracted to it?
Yeah, well, I'll start. I'm Crystal Louie. I'm the design director at NoTell. Thank you to Marielle and Disrupt CRE for having me today. NoTell is a flexible workplace provider, so we acquire, build out, fit out, and manage property spaces. So many of our clients are growing or rapidly expanding clients who need flexible spaces. They're looking for full floor or full building spaces. So I think one of the biggest value propositions is flexibility and speed. Office space is probably one of the most expensive line items in any company, and there really is no CEO who can predict 5, 7, 10 years from now what their headcount is going to look like. So, it's hard to say from a real estate perspective to have that same sort of prediction. So with NoTell, we have the ability to scale with you, so you don't have to worry about taking on that long-term lease. And then the other thing is speed. I came from the hospitality world where it would take anywhere from 3 to 6 years to build out a hotel. Workplace, 8 to 12 months. NoTell, we do it in 90 days. I mean, that's something that I haven't really ever seen, and it's because, of our incredible team, but also we've built out some amazing standards. And within that time, you are working with a design team, a workplace strategy team, our procurement team, where we're able to get product in 4 to 6 weeks. So, you can move into a new space in about 2 to 3 months. So, workplace as a service is really about two things. It's flexibility and speed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Wong. I'm a managing director at Tishman Speyer. I would just add, totally agree on sort of the flexibility and speed point, and I would just add the piece that on the sort of other elements related to workplace as a service that we've gotten really excited about, the service element, the hospitality element, the amenitization, being in a seat as the landlord or operator or manager and bringing robust set of services to the tenant companies in a building. It helps them with employee satisfaction, employee retention, employee productivity, and we've just seen a lot of engagement from both the tenant companies and tenant employees on a pretty wide range of services, sort of an ever-increasing list of services that people seem to be really appreciative of.
I think just following up on the sort of talking about the occupiers now, certainly from my experience working in workspace as a service, this was always a place for kind of startups, 2, 3, 4 size companies, nothing more than that. And obviously it's now becoming more attractive to large, more corporate occupiers like, what you guys are doing at NoTell and Tishman. And are you, there's a couple of things here. So given the size of these occupiers, they seem to be getting bigger going into flexible workspace. What are some of their demands? Are they coming to you with proper sort of enterprise corporate demands? Certainly in what we do from a tech perspective, we're seeing a lot more questions now about network resilience, security, compliance, etc. And you wouldn't really have seen that 15, 20 years ago in the kind of flex office industry. What are the sort of demands that you're seeing?
From the tech side, I'll leave it to Carly, but at least from an enterprise client perspective, they do have their standards, but I really think it's about piloting new ways in which workplace can operate. I think one misconception is we have a build out, this is what you have, this is what you're committed to. With NoTell, there's a lot of agility there. We have our own proprietary line of furniture where you're working with modular systems, modular walls, but I think it's also something that we're seeing a lot in the industry where, again, when you can't predict your headcount, you can't predict what teams are going to move in there. So each team, each person has a unique need. So using NoTell as that pilot opportunity for you to flex within that space, test out new ways in which people are working, is a huge, value add to clients.
And would NoTell therefore see that as a, you'd bring someone in for 3 years and then you'd be happy to see them go because they've piloted, or you'd still want to keep them?
You want to keep them.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that comes, again, I'm going to keep saying agility and flexibility because, part of what our value proposition is that, if you outgrow a space, we have more space within our portfolio, but it's also how your teams are growing. We can switch it out for a new modular wall system and create a new lab for you, or a new way, you're working at, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were all working in private offices, and then we dramatically shifted to open workplace, and then we realized, okay, it's too loud, I can't work, and now we're shifting probably more towards the middle, where we're probably looking at 15 to 30 person neighborhood sizes. So I think as we're shifting, we don't really want to rely on full build-outs. We want to deal with a lot of agility within our wall spaces. So modular systems are really the future of workplace.
From a technology standpoint, there's obviously lots of vendors, us included in this room. It's kind of a key cog in making all this work. What role does that play, do you think, Carly? I'm throwing it over to you.
I'm totally biased. It's the most important part, of course. I think it's a huge role. I think it's kind of the connector of it all, like you said. So a lot of times people have a mixed portfolio, right? So they have an HQ, and then they have some workplace as a service, and I think technology is kind of what ties it all together. When you walk into the building that's yours, it has a wayfinder. When you walk into your NoTell or WeWork, same wayfinder, so you have that consistency. I think it's all about bringing that experience, that human experience that we're all going for nowadays. So the employees have the same experience using technology from the time they wake up, from the time they sit down, from the time they go home. They have this technology guiding them through the day. But then also the managers or the C-level people also have all the data they need to help them make strategic decisions around their workplace as a service or around their workplace not as a service. And so kind of what we're seeing is workplace technology is really blowing up because there's so many options and it's changing so quickly. But as far as kind of workplace as a service goes, is that people are really asking for technology around managing agile workspaces. So how do I manage hotel seats? How do I manage flex seating? So we get a lot of requests around that, about blue dot wayfinding, so people can find their way around new, changing, adding, removing. Like she said, it's very flexible, so people need to be able to work around that flexibility. By 2020, the workplace will be 50% millennials, and by 2026, 75%. And millennials, just like you said, are all about community, flexibility, technology, and so we really need to implement tech that really supports that change in workplace and kind of can guide them through their day. And the other thing that we're seeing is actually, because a lot of people now have mixed portfolios, is that it really, really helps to have a data plan. So not that I want to give, a bunch of adults in the room homework, but I would say if you are kind of using workplace as a service, please, please, please have a data plan up front, because what's happening is the data that you receive from a workplace as a service is often different than the data you receive if you have your own buildings. So if you have a space management tool you're using or a wayfinding tool, make sure NoTell or whoever you're using knows that you need the floor plans in advance. Or if you're syncing your badge data with your seating data, make sure they know that you need that badge data and how you need it formatted. So that way up front, you're getting the data you need to get that holistic view, because I think that's kind of what we're all after, right? We just want to collect data to get a whole view of our workplace. And so those are kind of some of the things we're seeing as far as trends.
I think also, just to echo one of Justin's comments in the final of the previous session, as long as it's all coming back to a single system of record, it's very easy to go down several different rabbit holes, an app here, an app there, a system here, a system there, and you're kind of stuck. So yeah, so long as it's all pointing back towards something, which kind of leads me on to the next question around, and Jenny, perhaps you could help in terms of, do you buy it or build it when it comes to technology? Do you use partners? Do you try and build stuff in-house? What's the general appetite from Tishman on that?
So when I'd say a little bit of both, which probably is a bit of more of a complex answer. But there's starting a technology business is like it's a tall order. You've got to staff up. You've got to find the right product people and the right engineering people. And so for us, are we going to build an entire sort of app team internally, or work with best-in-class providers externally? We're going to work with best-in-class providers externally. That being said, I'd say as we think about the types of problems that we're answering, the types of questions we're answering, and how we prioritize, how we use technology, that's very, very, very much an internal strategic decision. And so, for example, we have a Zoe app that we've launched in our buildings. We have a studio app that we've launched in our co-working spaces. As we think about the next generation of those apps, and maybe it's those apps continuing on their own, or as we think about sort of, is there a next gen that ties this kind of thing together? That's such a strategic decision. That's one that we would, very much navigate internally before figuring out, who externally we would partner with on that.
I think, given, I guess, some of the audience in here are not flex office operators, but maybe are thinking about it, or landlords, or have kind of big kind of real estate portfolios. Are there any sort of common misconceptions, do you think, about workspace as a service, or anything that the room should be aware of? And what are the kind of, I guess, the key drivers as to why this is suddenly such an explosive market? Why potentially should some people in the room get into flex office space?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that with flexible office space or co-working is that it's trendy, that it's really only for freelancers or startups. And I think, yes, there is certainly spaces that are available to service that. But I think the most important thing, it comes down to flexibility. With the way the real estate market is going, you just can't predict what your headcount is going to be. So, having that flexibility within your real estate portfolio is really something that flexible office spaces or workplace as a service is able to provide.
We have several customers that use Workplace as a Service, large customers. And what's really great about it is the flexibility, but also that they can brand it and make it look like all of their other buildings. So you get consistent flexibility, which is really, really nice, and I think really kind of positive. I think the other kind of positive thing that I hope we're going to see is that workplace teams are traditionally too small, and so I'm hoping that Workplace as a Service will start to take some of the burden off of the workplace team so that they can focus on being proactive and more predictive maintenance, which we've all been talking about forever, but most of us are so reactive. And so I'm hoping that Workplace as a Service is really going to start to push for that shift.
I'd say one other misconception maybe is that it's very youthful, it's sort of like the foosball table, like the beer keg, and the way we've gotten into Workplace as a Service is through the lens of enterprises, because we're coming from being an owner, so already having a lot of those relationships and further expanding those relationships. So perhaps it's a question that's arisen, because of that, but I think in a way, the question isn't wrong, because it may not be there's foosball in every suite, but I think there is an attention to creating an experience in Workplace as a Service that is delightful to your employees, and whether that is to one firm that might have a bunch of perks that might look one way, or another that might have a totally different design. I think there is an element to work that's focused on creating a very delightful physical experience for people.
I think that's also because the decision making now to where you choose to work from a company perspective isn't exclusively down to the CEO anymore. They have to find and attract talent. So having a foosball table, maybe a free beer pump, maybe not the latter, but certainly helps them sort of do that. And it's an important thing in how you kind of deliver office space these days. One question, and which I'm interested to understand more about. If you think about the sort of spectrum of office space, you've got kind of the co-working, foosball, beer pong down this end, and then you've got your traditional 10, 25-year lease up this end. How and obviously NoTell, you're kind of bridging that gap to a certain degree in the middle. What are, if landlords are looking to do a little bit of flex, what are some of the additional services they provide over and above just a lease? So is it internet? Is it a member app? Any kind of advice on that, or any sort of, if they're going to dip their toes, how should they dip their toes?
We definitely have a member app. And I think, depending on the tenant who's in there, we definitely provide a turnkey solution. We're trying to make it very easy for you so that you don't have to focus on what your internet provider is or anything like that. We provide that for you. But there is a lot of flexibility into, what your standards are. We're able to adapt to that as well. So I do feel like while NoTell does provide that white glove turnkey solution for tenants who just don't want to think about it, and they just want to move in and they just want to focus on their business, there are also a lot of, enterprise clients who have security needs, network needs, people needs in terms of their, people services. So there's a lot of flexibility there. But I think for most clients, it's really that turnkey solution that they're looking for.
I'll finish up with, as an example, actually looking at the more kind of enterprise occupiers. We had one of our customers had a company that rhymes with Netflix move into one of our company location or customer locations, and clearly they came with tons of security, resilience, network requirements, which our customer could deliver to them. And so they've now taken about 40,000 feet in Hollywood on a full flex, not a lease, on a license. And so for me, it's a prime example of going back to the whole foosball ping pong. Actually, it's not. This is properly now for big, large occupiers, seeing this as a long-term solution across their whole portfolio of buildings. I think that sort of rounds up for the session. Thanks ever so much, ladies and gents. Thanks to the panel. Apologies, I didn't intro you initially. Apologies. Thank you.